The genesis of this profound shift was remarkably muted, unfolding with such an imperceptible grace that for a considerable stretch of time, its subtle tremors escaped the keenest observations of even the most diligent royal watchers. There was no official palace announcement to mark its inception, no meticulously crafted press release disseminated to the global media, nor any formally posed photograph released for public consumption. Instead, it manifested as nothing more than a faint, almost intangible alteration, a quiet deviation from established routines, and a significant decision deliberately made away from public scrutiny, behind firmly closed doors. This discreet action, initially a mere whisper within the hallowed corridors of power, was destined to send profound ripples throughout the entirety of the royal family in ways that very few, if any, could have possibly foretold. Prince William, a figure long recognized for his inherently cautious approach to matters of state and his deeply ingrained respect for centuries of royal tradition, embarked upon a private move that, according to those privy to the inner workings of the monarchy, was profoundly personal, imbued with considerable emotional weight, and ultimately proved impossible for anyone to disregard. When the initial whispers of this significant development finally reached Prince Harry and Meghan, the reported reaction was said to be nothing short of absolute shock, a profound jolt to their expectations and understanding. For a period spanning many years, the intricate relationship between the two brothers has been consistently characterized as deeply strained, overtly complicated, and notably punctuated by prolonged periods of silence rather than punctuated by dramatic, overt confrontations. Following the pivotal moment when Prince Harry and Meghan made the momentous decision to step back from their senior royal duties and subsequently relocated their lives across the Atlantic Ocean to California, a vast expanse of water quite literally came to separate them not only geographically but also emotionally from the remaining members of the royal family. Publicly, there were carefully curated statements conveying sentiments of enduring love, mutual understanding, and earnest wishes for each other's continued well-being. Privately, however, numerous sources intimately connected to the family have consistently hinted at a persistent undercurrent of unresolved tensions, deeply etched feelings of betrayal, and a pervasive sense of profound loss that neither brother has yet been able to fully articulate or reconcile. Against this emotionally charged and complex backdrop, Prince William's calculated move carried far more inherent weight and significance than it might have initially appeared to possess on the surface. According to those intimately familiar with the intricate dynamics of the situation, this pivotal decision was firmly rooted in William's steadily intensifying focus upon his inescapable future role as king. As the Prince of Wales, he has progressively and increasingly stepped into a multitude of responsibilities that were once predominantly shouldered by his father, King Charles. With this natural progression comes an ever-sharpening awareness of the profound importance of legacy. Not merely a personal one, but a dynastic one. Prince William has always been consistently described as an individual who possesses a remarkable capacity for long-term strategic thinking, someone who meticulously weighs the implications of his decisions not merely by their immediate impact today, but by how they will be perceived and judged not just one or two, but many decades from now. In recent months, that deeply ingrained mindset appears to have undergone a notable intensification. Close friends and confidants report that he has become considerably more introspective, more resolutely protective of his immediate family, his wife and children, and even more determined to clearly define a forward-looking path for the monarchy, even if charting that course necessitates the quiet and deliberate closing of certain doors that once stood open. The move itself, when finally enacted, was profoundly symbolic in its nature and execution. Prince William made the conscious choice to meticulously reorganize key aspects of his private life and to carefully refine the composition of his inner circle. This involved a deliberate streamlining of who retained access to him, who was permitted to offer him counsel and advice, and who remained intimately connected to his most personal affairs. This was not a matter concerning public titles, official patronages, or ceremonial duties. Rather, it was fundamentally a matter of profound trust. Trusted, long-serving aides, who had been fixtures within his personal office for many years, found themselves quietly reassigned to new roles, marking a clear delineation of his evolving priorities. Simultaneously, certain family-linked channels of communication, once fluid and readily accessible, were reportedly pared back, their frequency and intimacy significantly diminished. Even specific informal traditions, those unspoken rituals and gestures that had, for decades, subtly woven the fabric of connection between the two brothers, were now permitted to gently recede into the annals of memory, no longer actively maintained. To Prince William, this was not perceived as an act of aggression, nor a punitive measure, but rather a necessary and considered act of self-preservation. He firmly believed he was undertaking precisely what was required to safeguard the well-being of his beloved wife, his cherished children, and, perhaps most importantly, to ensure the enduring stability and future prosperity of the ancient monarchy he is destined to lead one day. What rendered the entire situation particularly sensitive and fraught with emotional complexity was the intricate and deeply intertwined emotional history that had long existed between Prince William and Prince Harry. Growing up under the relentless glare of immense public attention and scrutiny, the two brothers had leaned heavily upon each other, forming an almost impenetrable bond in the wake of the devastating death of their mother. That profound connection, forged in the crucible of shared grief and unimaginable loss, was once widely considered to be utterly unbreakable. However, the progression into adulthood, the complexities of marriage, and the emergence of vastly divergent visions for their respective lives ultimately pulled them in distinctly opposite directions. Prince Harry's increasing openness about his personal struggles and emotional vulnerabilities, combined with Meghan's pronounced willingness to challenge and question established royal norms, collectively created a narrative that frequently placed Prince William in an inherently uncomfortable and challenging position. He found himself perpetually balancing his deep-seated loyalty to his brother with his unwavering duty to the venerable institution he served, and over the passage of time, that delicate and demanding balancing act inevitably took a considerable and cumulative toll. When Harry and Meghan reportedly became aware of William's deeply personal and private decision, the information did not arrive through the warmth of a heartfelt phone call, nor was it conveyed via a personal, direct message. Instead, it reached them indirectly, a subtle yet significant detail that, in its very nature, speaks volumes about the current state of affairs. Those with intimate knowledge of the situation suggest that Harry experienced a profound sense of being blindsided, perceiving the strategic move not as a neutral administrative restructuring, but rather as a deliberate and intentional act of distancing. For Meghan, who has long expressed feelings of exclusion and misunderstanding within the intricate workings of the royal system, this particular event served to reinforce her firmly held belief that the palace operates predominantly behind the scenes, often in ways that can feel both cold and unyielding, devoid of personal warmth. The initial shock, therefore, transcended the mere specifics of the decision itself. It resonated more deeply as a potent symbol, that of a brother deliberately choosing a future path that, at least for the foreseeable moment, appeared to leave no discernible room for the prospect of reconciliation. From William's perspective, however, this weighty choice was never intended to be punitive in its essence. Individuals close to him consistently affirm that he continues to care deeply and genuinely for his brother, Harry. Nevertheless, he has undeniably reached a pivotal juncture where the establishment of clear emotional boundaries has become not merely desirable, but absolutely necessary for his own well-being and future trajectory. The relentless and constant media scrutiny, the public airing of grievances that have unfolded over time, and the unpredictable, often damaging impact of various revelations have collectively rendered him profoundly wary. Every seemingly private conversation now carries the inherent and escalating risk of transforming into public discourse, dissected and debated on a global stage. For a man diligently preparing to assume the immense responsibilities of kingship, such a pervasive and persistent risk feels increasingly untenable and unsustainable. By quietly, yet resolutely, reshaping his immediate world and inner circle, William harbored the profound hope of regaining a vital sense of control and, crucially, a much-needed measure of calm amidst the perpetual storm. Yet, despite William's quiet intentions, silence itself possesses a peculiar and potent way of speaking far louder and more eloquently than any spoken words ever could. The stark absence of direct communication between the brothers, coupled with the subtle yet noticeable shifts observed by keen royal watchers, and the undeniable, growing emotional distance, have all collectively fueled an intense wave of speculation. Observers and the public alike found themselves pondering whether this marked a temporary pause in their fractured relationship or represented a more permanent, irreversible change? Was William, in his actions, leaving the door to future dialogue slightly ajar? Or was he, with quiet resolve, gently but firmly closing it forever? These profound and fundamental questions continue to linger, perpetually unanswered, thereby significantly adding to the pervasive sense of drama and intrigue that now surrounds the entire complex situation. What remains unequivocally clear is that this recent move has indelibly marked a significant turning point, not only for the individuals involved but for the broader royal narrative. It unmistakably signals the commencement of a new and distinct phase in William's life, one in which he consciously prioritizes clarity and practicality over the comforting pull of nostalgia, and steadfast stability over fleeting sentimentality. For Harry and Meghan, this development serves as a stark, undeniable reminder that the venerable royal family, as an institution, possesses an intrinsic momentum, and it will continue its forward trajectory, with or without their active involvement. The profound shock they reportedly experienced was not solely about the sting of being excluded. It was rooted in the far more devastating realization that the once unshakable brotherly bond, a connection they had implicitly relied upon for so long, might never, in its truest form, return to what it once profoundly was. As the entire world watches intently from the outside, meticulously interpreting every subtle gesture and diligently reading between the carefully crafted lines, the true, deeply personal emotional weight of William's far-reaching decision remains intimately known only to those who stand closest to him, privy to the unspoken truths. Nevertheless, one incontrovertible truth emerges with crystal clarity. This quiet, profoundly private strategic move has irrevocably reshaped the intricate dynamic of one of the most closely observed and publicly scrutinized families on the entire planet. And while its immediate implications may not have instantly dominated global headlines with explosive force, its profound and lasting impact is still subtly unfolding, carrying with it a myriad of complex consequences that are destined to be felt and understood for many years, perhaps even decades to come. As the days gradually passed, extending into weeks and then months, the full emotional fallout stemming from William's significant decision began to manifest and take shape in increasingly quieter, yet undeniably more revealing ways. There were, notably, no public statements issued to clarify the situation, nor were there any dramatic rebuttals or impassioned defenses. Instead, subtle, almost imperceptible signs emerged, signaling that something fundamental and irreversible had indeed shifted within the royal landscape. Invitations that, in previous times, might have been readily extended and eagerly anticipated, simply never materialized. Messages that, in an earlier era, would have been answered with promptness and personal attention, were now met with carefully worded, polite delays or, more tellingly, routed through official intermediaries, creating a layer of bureaucratic distance. To those observing from outside the intricate royal ecosystem, these seemingly minor details might easily appear insignificant or trivial. However, within the tightly knit and highly structured royal circles, such nuances carry an enormous and undeniable weight of meaning, acting as a sophisticated, unspoken language. They represent the precise language of distance, spoken with remarkable fluency by an institution meticulously built upon centuries of inherent restraint and carefully cultivated decorum. For Harry, this slow, dawning realization was profoundly and deeply unsettling to his core. Despite the myriad of events and conflicts that had transpired and accumulated over the preceding years, there had always persisted an underlying assumption, perhaps even a tenacious hope, that the unbreakable ties of blood would, in the final analysis, ultimately outweigh any personal or public conflict. He had, on numerous occasions, openly articulated his earnest desire for genuine reconciliation, expressing his deep longing for his beloved children to know and connect with their British family, and speaking candidly about the profound pain of feeling perpetually cut off from his very roots. Therefore, learning that William had taken such deliberate and calculated steps to redefine the very contours of his inner world and his future path made those cherished hopes feel incredibly fragile, almost to the point of shattering. It strongly suggested that the ever-widening gap between the two brothers was no longer merely emotional in its nature, but had evolved into something far more structural and institutional, now reinforced by a series of concrete decisions meticulously designed to endure and last, perhaps, forever. Meghan's intricate response, as conveyed by those intimately familiar with the couple's experiences, was a tapestry woven with threads of conflicting emotions, far from a simple or straightforward reaction. On one hand, she experienced a profound sense of validation, almost an affirmation of her long-held beliefs. From her deeply personal perspective, William's decisive move seemed to unequivocally confirm what she had long suspected regarding the ingrained nature of the royal system, which, in her view, appeared to relentlessly prioritize rigid hierarchy and stringent control, often at the expense of genuine empathy and transparent openness. Yet, on the other hand, there was also a poignant undercurrent of profound disappointment that resonated deeply. Despite the myriad and often daunting challenges she had faced during her time within the institution, Meghan had once harbored a hopeful vision of a future where, despite significant divergences in their chosen paths, a fundamental foundation of mutual respect could still genuinely flourish. The stark, quiet finality of William's decisive actions rendered that cherished vision significantly more difficult, almost impossible, to sustain and hold onto within her heart. Meanwhile, deep within William's own meticulously managed household, the prevailing atmosphere was one imbued with a sense of cautious, yet unwavering resolve. Catherine, widely acknowledged and admired for her remarkable capacity to seamlessly balance genuine personal warmth with an unwavering, astute discretion, was said to stand steadfastly supportive of her husband's deeply considered and ultimately difficult choice. As a devoted mother, her singular, paramount concern had always revolved, and continued to revolve, around the holistic well-being and emotional security of her beloved children. The preceding several years had undeniably subjected them to a far greater degree of relentless public scrutiny and palpable tension than any loving parent would ever willingly wish for their offspring. Consequently, safeguarding their fragile sense of childhood normalcy and routine had ascended to a position of absolute, unquestionable paramount importance. For both William and Catherine, the imperative of creating a stable, predictable, and reassuring environment for their family meant proactively and decisively minimizing any and all potential disruptions, even and perhaps especially, when those disruptions emanated from within the intricate web of their own extended family. This particular period also marked a distinctly noticeable and widely observed transformation in the very fabric of how William approached and executed his demanding public role. Observers noted a palpable, almost tangible newfound firmness in his bearing and overall demeanor, indicative of a subtle, yet utterly unmistakable and pronounced, shift towards a more overt and self-assured assertion of his inherent authority. He appeared demonstrably more confident and resolute in establishing clear, unequivocal boundaries, far less inclined to offer extensive explanations for his choices or actions, and instead dedicating his considerable energies to the strategic pursuit of enduring, long-term initiatives, rather than merely engaging in transient reactive gestures. It was as if the profoundly significant private decision he had recently undertaken had paradoxically served to unlock within him an even clearer, more sharply defined sense of overarching purpose. By resolutely confronting and effectively resolving these deeply personal internal conflicts, he had, in essence, liberated a substantial reservoir of emotional energy, allowing him to channel that invigorated focus directly towards shaping and meticulously crafting the future he so clearly envisioned for the venerable institution of the monarchy. Yet, this newfound clarity, however profound and beneficial it appeared, was undeniably accompanied by a significant and deeply felt personal cost. The palpable loss of that once effortless, intrinsically brotherly connection weighed with considerable heaviness upon his spirit, even though he, with characteristic stoicism, rarely, if ever, acknowledged this profound emotional burden in the public sphere. Those few individuals who truly know him intimately attest that he is by no means immune to the poignant pangs of regret or the profound depths of sadness. Instead, he meticulously processes and contends with these powerful emotions in the utmost privacy, far removed from the intrusive gaze of cameras and the speculative analyses of commentators. He inherently comprehends that the arduous path of leadership frequently necessitates profound sacrifices, many of which remain perpetually unseen and unacknowledged by the wider world, and, in the carefully structured framework of his own mind, This particular decision stood as a prime example of precisely such an unseen sacrifice. The very act of choosing the weight of the crown, even many years before the moment of its eventual physical placement upon his head, necessitated a quiet, yet profound, acceptance of the stark reality that certain deeply intertwined personal relationships might, regrettably, never truly and completely heal. Across the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, Harry found himself wrestling with a deeply ingrained and disquietingly familiar sense of profound isolation. While his chosen life in California undoubtedly provided him with a cherished sense of personal freedom, expansive creative opportunities, and a genuinely supportive circle of trusted friends, such pivotal moments as this one served to starkly underscore the immense distance he had traversed, both geographically and emotionally, from the foundational elements of his past. The profound shock occasioned by William's decisive move transcended mere feelings of personal exclusion. It was more fundamentally about the difficult and sobering confrontation with a new, immutable reality wherein the prospect of genuine reconciliation could no longer be held as a guaranteed, or even likely outcome. For an individual who has consistently and courageously spoken with unwavering openness about the critical importance of mental health and the indispensable value of human connection, this particular, stark realization resonated with a profoundly painful depth within his very being. At precisely the same time, Harry and Meghan remained acutely, almost painfully, aware of the meticulous scrutiny and varied interpretations that any potential reaction on their part would inevitably attract. To respond with an overly strong or overtly emotional stance, they knew, carried the significant risk of merely reinforcing existing narratives of intractable conflict and discord. Conversely, to maintain complete silence could, with equal probability, be misconstrued as a tacit form of resignation or even outright acceptance of the situation. This exceptionally delicate and persistently challenging balance had, in essence, evolved into a defining and pervasive feature of their entire post-royal existence. Consequently, virtually every single choice they made felt profoundly weighted with potential implications, and every period of silence they observed was subjected to intense, often speculative scrutiny. William's recent, impactful decision merely introduced yet another intricate and demanding layer to this already formidable complexity, thereby compelling them to undertake a thorough and profound reassessment of precisely how, or indeed if, they would continue to engage with the royal family in the unfolding future. Deep within the ancient, hallowed confines of the palace walls, the most senior and influential figures of the institution reportedly regarded William's decisive move not merely as a choice, but rather as an ultimately inevitable and necessary strategic step. From their deeply ingrained institutional perspective, the venerable monarchy, as an enduring entity, fundamentally thrives upon unassailable clarity and seamless, unbroken continuity. Any form of ambiguity, particularly when it pertained to high-profile members of the royal family, was perceived as an inherent and potentially significant risk to the institution's stability and public perception. Consequently, by unequivocally drawing demonstrably firmer and clearer lines, William was widely interpreted as actively strengthening the very foundations of the institution, rather than in any way diminishing or weakening it. While there existed a quiet, perhaps unspoken, understanding that this process undoubtedly entailed a measure of profound personal pain for all involved, there concurrently persisted a resolute and deeply held belief that the annals of history would ultimately judge the decision with a degree of kindness and understanding, especially if it successfully served its intended purpose of preserving crucial stability during an undeniably turbulent and transformative period of societal change. As the initial, hushed whispers of the unfolding situation began to subtly permeate the public consciousness, the collective reaction was, as might have been anticipated, distinctly bifurcated. A considerable segment of the populace extended their heartfelt sympathies towards Harry, perceiving him as a younger sibling, perhaps unfairly ostracized and left exposed in a metaphorical chill. Conversely, an equally vocal contingent lauded William, commending his unwavering resolve in prioritizing the solemn demands of duty and his steadfast commitment to safeguarding the enduring legacy and future trajectory of the monarchy. The digital landscape, particularly social media platforms, became an effervescent hub, teeming with myriad theories, deeply visceral emotional responses, and fervent debates centered on intricate concepts of familial loyalty, personal responsibility, and the profound complexities of forgiveness. Nevertheless, amidst this cacophony of voices and opinions, the key individuals directly involved maintained a profound and conspicuous silence, a strategic reticence that inadvertently permitted rampant speculation to proliferate and occupy the void where official statements might otherwise have been. The profound weight of this particular juncture was further underscored by its very specific and critical timing. At a period when the venerable institution of the monarchy found itself meticulously navigating the delicate intricacies of a generational transition, striving to rebuild and maintain public trust, and adapting to an ever-evolving tapestry of societal expectations, each internal adjustment, no matter how ostensibly minor, inevitably assumed an amplified and far-reaching significance. William's deliberate and private action transcended the mere realm of familial dynamics. It served as a potent and unequivocal signal of his profound readiness. A readiness to assume the weighty mantle of leadership, to make difficult and solitary decisions, and to accept with unwavering resolve the full spectrum of consequences stemming from those choices. Through this decisive act, he effectively delineated a clear boundary, a strategic demarcation that holds the potential to profoundly define the character and direction of his future reign, long preceding its formal commencement. For Harry and Meghan, the trajectory of their path forward continues to be shrouded in an undeniable veil of uncertainty. The initial, jarring shock of the situation has, with the inexorable passage of time, gradually receded, giving way to a more profound and sobering clarity regarding their new reality. They are assiduously engaged in the intricate process of constructing a life meticulously defined by their own deeply held values and principles, a life deliberately independent of the traditional strictures and expectations of royal structures. Yet, pivotal moments such as this invariably serve as poignant and inescapable reminders of the significant aspects of their past that have been irrevocably relinquished and left behind. The profound question of whether the ameliorating influence of time will eventually succeed in softening William's resolute stance, or conversely, whether it will merely serve to deepen the already perceptible divide between the brothers, remains an enigma that only the unfolding chapters of the future possess the capacity to fully unravel and answer. As the intricate narrative surrounding these events persistently continues to unfold before the public eye, one immutable truth emerges with striking prominence. This was emphatically not a dramatic, tumultuous break fueled by overt anger or confrontational exchanges. Instead, it manifested as a quiet, yet profoundly deliberate, recalibration of existing relationships and expectations, executed with meticulous intention and admirable restraint. And it is precisely this understated nature that, in a multitude of ways, renders it even more profoundly powerful. For it is often observed that the most truly shocking and transformative moves are not the boisterous, attention-demanding pronouncements, but rather the silent, almost imperceptible shifts that fundamentally alter the entire landscape without a single declarative word ever needing to be uttered aloud. With the steady and unyielding march of time, the profound weight of William's momentous decision gradually began to settle, solidifying into a new, albeit unfamiliar, normal. This emerging reality systematically reshaped and redefined the expectations held by all parties involved. What had initially registered as a startling and profoundly shocking development slowly, yet inexorably, transmuted into a steady, undeniable, and deeply ingrained reality. The conspicuous absence of any overt conflict or dramatic confrontation rendered it exceedingly difficult for dissenting voices to meaningfully challenge the new status quo. Furthermore, the deliberate lack of an expansive public explanation left precious little room for anything other than a quiet, internal acceptance within the venerable confines of the royal family itself. Established routines were subtly adjusted and recalibrated. Public and private events continued their scheduled progression. The enduring institution, in a testament to its long-standing resilience, seamlessly performed what it has historically executed with unparalleled mastery. It adapted quietly yet remarkably efficiently to this entirely new set of evolving circumstances. For William, this distinct phase in his life engendered a palpable and profound sense of internal alignment and conviction. The private, decisive move he had undertaken was no longer merely perceived as a protective measure, designed solely to shield his family or the institution. Instead, it organically evolved into a fundamental cornerstone, a guiding principle that would henceforth inform his comprehensive approach to leadership, to his familial relationships, and to his public life as a prominent figure. He appeared to embrace with increasing comfort the nuanced understanding that not every unfolding narrative necessitates a public response, and that not every strained relationship can be salvaged or mended through sheer effort alone. In the carefully defined parameters of his world, the imperative of responsibility now distinctly outweighed the aspiration for immediate reconciliation, not due to any perceived diminishment or vanishing of fraternal love, but rather because he held a steadfast belief that the overarching greater good, encompassing both the monarchy and the nation, unequivocally demanded a crystalline clarity and an unwavering sense of purpose. This deeply held conviction profoundly shaped his subsequent actions, meticulously defined his priorities, and rigorously reinforced the personal and professional boundaries he meticulously maintained. Catherine's pivotal role during this period of significant change became demonstrably even more pronounced and strategically vital. With her characteristic grace, she steadfastly continued to project an aura of warmth and unwavering stability in her public appearances, offering a consistently reassuring presence that served as a striking counterpoint to the subtle, yet pervasive undercurrents of family tension. Those intimately acquainted with her disposition attest to her profound capacity to understand both perspectives within the familial divide, harboring a genuine sense of compassion and empathy for Harry, even while standing with unwavering loyalty and resolute support firmly beside her husband, William. Her primary focus remained acutely honed on cultivating an unshakable sense of unity and emotional security within the sanctuary of her own immediate household, diligently shielding her 3 children from the intricate emotional complexities and the relentless public scrutiny that are an inherent part of belonging to such an exceptionally famous and scrutinized family. In performing these crucial functions, she inadvertently yet effectively helped to solidify and reinforce the very vision of life and the future that William was so determinately striving to protect and secure. For Harry, the trajectory of his intensely personal emotional journey assumed a distinctly different and profoundly introspective shape. The initial disorienting shock he experienced gradually, almost imperceptibly, evolved into a period of deep and sustained reflection, which, in turn, matured into a quieter, more profound form of acceptance. He has, throughout his life, invariably carried a deep and resonant connection to his personal past and his heritage, and pivotal moments such as this compelled him to directly confront the stark and often unyielding permanence of change. The poignant realization that his elder brother was resolutely forging ahead, charting a course entirely independent of his presence, was undeniably painful, stirring a complex mix of sorrow and longing. Yet, paradoxically, this very realization also crystallized something of immense and enduring importance for him. His future, rather than being passively defined by an indefinite period of waiting for reconciliation or a change of heart, would instead be actively and purposefully shaped by the vibrant new family he had assiduously created and by the deeply cherished values he had consciously chosen to live by and uphold. Meghan, with her inherently keen perception for the subtle emotional undercurrents that often ripple beneath the surface of grand events, consistently encouraged a forward-looking perspective. Even as she undoubtedly experienced the sharp, personal sting of exclusion, a feeling that could have easily led to resentment or stagnation, she simultaneously possessed the remarkable ability to discern the profound opportunity that this very situation presented. She recognized that with fewer intricate emotional ties pulling them back towards a past that was no longer serving their evolving needs, she and Harry were granted the unique freedom to fully and wholeheartedly invest themselves in forging their own distinct and independent path. Their chosen projects, their dedicated advocacy work, and the increasingly resonant public voices they cultivated collectively became vibrant, authentic expressions of a life no longer tethered to the often constricting need for royal approval. In this context, William's specific and private move, undeniably painful as it may have been for all involved, paradoxically served to solidify that burgeoning separation, rendering it far less ambiguous and considerably more definitive in its implications. Yet, despite the clear demarcation of new boundaries, the intricate narrative did not conclude with a simple sense of closure or a straightforward resolution. Instead, there persisted a series of moments, often small in scale and profoundly human in their nature, that subtly hinted at a lingering, unspoken connection. These were instances like a fleeting, shared glance exchanged across a crowded public event, a carefully chosen and nuanced phrase embedded within a formal speech, or a respectful, perhaps even poignant, silence observed during significant family milestones. Such gestures, delicate and understated as they invariably were, powerfully suggested that while explicit boundaries had indeed been meticulously drawn and publicly acknowledged, the deep-seated emotion that had always bound them together had by no means been entirely erased. The complex bond between the two brothers, a relationship forged in the innocent crucible of childhood and subsequently tested by the manifold pressures and challenges of adulthood, remained stubbornly complicated, an intricate tapestry of shared history and divergent futures, rather than being completely and irrevocably severed. The public's intense fascination with their evolving situation only deepened and grew more pervasive as the years gracefully unfolded. An army of commentators, both professional and amateur, meticulously analyzed every flicker of body language, painstakingly dissected even the most minor of official statements, and relentlessly searched for any discernible signs of a potential thaw in relations or, conversely, a further deepening of the frost. Each and every public appearance made by either William or Harry was inevitably viewed through the singular, all-encompassing lens of their fractured relationship, an interpretive framework applied whether they consciously acknowledged it or not. Nevertheless, both men appeared increasingly resolute and determined to live their lives beyond the confines of that pervasive public narrative. William, with a clear sense of purpose, steadfastly focused on the demanding task of shaping a modern monarchy, one deeply rooted in the enduring principles of selfless service and unwavering stability. Harry, on the other hand, embarked upon the equally challenging journey of redefining his own life and identity entirely outside the traditional, often restrictive royal confines. What ultimately rendered William's private and personal move so profoundly impactful was not merely its immediate surface-level effect, but rather its far-reaching and enduring long-term implications. It inadvertently, or perhaps deliberately, established a clear precedent for how he intended to handle future conflicts. With a quiet, measured resolve, a decisive hand, and an unwavering eye fixed firmly toward the future, rather than dwelling on the grievances or traditions of the past. This particular approach, characterized by its pragmatic and forward-thinking nature, may very well come to define the entirety of his eventual reign, signaling the emergence of a monarch who places a paramount value on structured order over fleeting sentiment, and absolute clarity over any form of ambiguous compromise. For some observers, this will undoubtedly be a reassuring and comforting prospect, offering a sense of stability and predictability. For others, however, it may evoke a feeling of emotional distance or detachment. But either way, this definitive stance leaves little to no doubt about precisely where William stands on matters of principle and duty. For Harry and Meghan, the initial shock and the subsequent reverberations of William's decision have seamlessly woven themselves into the fabric of their ongoing story, becoming yet another significant chapter in a remarkable journey already marked by consistently bold choices and a series of often unexpected consequences. Through their experiences, they have come to understand, with a nuanced wisdom, that distance, while undeniably bringing its own measure of pain and sorrow, can concurrently offer a profound sense of liberation and freedom. They have also learned that the elusive concept of closure does not always arrive hand in hand with a complete and satisfying understanding of events. Sometimes, it simply manifests as the quiet passage of time itself, as life inexorably moves onward. In that deeper sense, William's decisive action, whether intended or not, compelled everyone involved to embark upon a path of significant personal growth, whether they initially desired to or not. As the years continue their relentless march forward, this particular moment may ultimately be remembered not as a dramatic and sudden rupture, but rather as a quiet yet utterly pivotal turning point. It was a moment when distinct paths diverged with clear intention and purpose, rather than through chaotic happenstance. A time when a future king chose to meticulously define his world with a newfound precision and an unwavering focus, and a period when a younger brother, with a mixture of acceptance and perhaps a touch of melancholy, came to terms with the irreversible truth that his established place within that world had fundamentally and irrevocably changed. History, in its grand sweeping narratives, often tends to focus on magnificent public gestures and resounding declarations. But, peering behind the elaborate scenes and beyond the glare of the spotlight, it is these intensely private decisions, these quiet, personal choices, that truly hold the power to shape individual destinies and alter the course of lives. In the final analysis, Prince William's private and deeply personal move accomplished far more than merely shocking Harry and Meghan. It served to definitively clarify a future that had, for an extended period, remained shrouded in uncertainty and ambiguity. It closed certain doors undeniably, but in doing so, it simultaneously opened others, drawing clear lines that, while they may one day be softened by the gentle hand of time or the healing power of reconciliation, will nevertheless never be truly forgotten. And as the compelling royal story continues its intricate unfolding, this quiet, yet monumentally impactful, choice will undoubtedly endure as a powerful and resonant reminder that sometimes the most profound and transformative changes in life do not transpire in front of the flashing cameras or within the public's avid gaze, but rather within the silent, often unseen spaces where the unyielding demands of personal duty and the complex currents of human emotion inevitably collide.